So I took a GBP and short setup and it ended up hitting my stop loss. I'm going to guide you through why I took the trade, but also showing you my mistakes and what I could have done differently in order to not hit a stop loss. So let's begin off with the weekly time frame here and let's see what I was looking for. So overall, weekly structure was bearish. We were inside a supply zone and we just grabbed major weekly liquidity. So I was expecting a little pullback down lower from that liquidity. So going over to the daily time frame then, you can clearly see that we're also daily structure bearish. We took that liquidity and then I was looking for a retracement down lower. Yes, we had bullish order flow, but I could at least try to catch a short to trade, for example, towards this refined demand zone. And then from there, we could either trade up higher or we could just trade down lower, getting that reaction from that liquidity. So going over to the 4 hour then, we were bullish, but as you guys know, you can't take pullbacks, right? Trading towards that 50%. So you know we're bullish and we should trade up higher in the long term, but as you can see, we also can trade that pullback and then trade up higher. So this move is the move I wanted to catch. So what did I wait for? Right after we took that weekly liquidity, what happened? We changed the fractal bearish, and this was also going to be the order flow that changed bearish. So at that point, we then had this supply, and from that supply, I was then looking to trade down lower in towards what? In towards this daily refined demand zone, as well as a 50% level. So when I went over to the 1 hour, I was looking for a setup inside this 4 hour supply. So when I looked at this supply zone, I immediately saw some internal liquidity that was laying inside this supply zone. So once we took the liquidity, I then wanted to see confirmation to trade down lower. So what I end up looking at was the 50% of this move down. So we moved down, I then saw a retracement in towards the premium prices, and then I wanted to short. What I can also see is that in the morning, we trade up higher, we grab liquidity above this high, we trade down lower, we then grab liquidity above this high, and then you can see we broke the fractal low over here. At that moment in time, a lot of people, they wanted to go short, of course, but then you can see one more swipe and then we trade down lower. So let me show that on the 50-minute to see what actually happened. Over here, we took liquidity, we tapped this 50-minute supply zone, and then this was 1 hour fractal. Then we broke the 1 hour fractal in towards the downside after grabbing liquidity. So why did I not took this trade, something like this, to trade down lower? Well, the reason was that most of the time, the first step inside the point of interest is most of the time the early sellers. So you can see we grab liquidity, we tap this supply, and then at that moment, you see the early sellers get into the market, breaking structure, getting more sellers into the market. Then I want to wait and not trade yet. I want to wait for another swipe, which we had over here. And now this could be yes once we break the low, which we then also did. So once we broke this low, then I was thinking, okay, this is a strong high. And then from that point, I could set my limit. So what I did is I had my stop loss then above this strong high. And I was now thinking, okay, we made a strong high and now we could just retrace down lower in towards those 4 hour discount prices. So then I took my tool and what did I do? I targeted some liquidity, and overall I was also looking for it to retrace towards those discount prices and ultimately possibly this little demand zone over here. But I ended up targeting these liquidity lows over here, and then I had my entry for a 3 risk to reward ratio. At that moment this trade was definitely valid, so then I ended up placing this trade, but over here it was a valid, but I didn't get an entry over here. So then it became night, and at that moment I should have removed my limit, because as you can see during Asia we got a swipe of the high and then we could possibly dump down lower right now. So instead of holding my limit overnight, I should have waited, I should have been patient and waited for the next day in order to find a new setup, which ended up not forming, but it is better than hitting a stop loss. So that was my mistake, that I should not trade after 5 p.m. I've backtested this and that's my rule. Now I broke this rule, one, because this is a yen pair and yen most of the time also moves during Asia. So I was expecting it to get my entry and then trade down lower. That didn't end up happening, and I should just follow my rules for next time, even though it's a yen pair or an AUD NZD pair, whatever it is, just follow my rules. So that's the first thing, and that's definitely something that needs to be done if I trade the lower time frame. If I trade the 4-hour time frame or maybe even higher, then I could definitely enter at night because my stop loss is really big. But as you can see, my stop loss was 37, almost 40 pips, and on GBP yen that's not a lot, and you can see just a quick swipe and then we can trade down lower. So this was the trade that I took. What I could have done better is, once I saw in the evening that I didn't get entered on the trade, I needed to remove my limit, wait for next day in order to set another entry next day. So I hope you guys learned from this video and saw why I wanted to take this trade, but then also saw what mistake I made, and it was easy to avoid that, but I ended up not following my rules. So what I advise you guys to do, set up your rules, do some backtesting, see what your rules are, and then with the data that you have, make a whole checklist, and you can only follow that checklist. If you don't follow that checklist, you should not trade. So that's also what I learned from now, and I'm never ever going to break any rules